I'm Sharon Bill. Welcome to my Music Theory Tuition series where I work with you step by step through the ABRSM Discovering Music Theory grades. I'll work through every single exercise and explain everything you need to know. You can access information about the books I have available to help you on my website. Go to sharonbill.com. For advert-free and longer lessons, you can become a patron at patreon.com/SharonBill. If you can give me a like, that would be super, and please do subscribe to my channel to stay updated. You can support this channel by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/SharonBill. Let's look at exercise 2 on page 52 of the Grade 1 Discovering Music Theory workbook. This is where we get to look at music in context. We get to look at a piece of music. In this case, it's a piece of music by Schubert. We've got a small extract here, and we get to analyse what's going on in the music to enable the composer to get exactly the effect and the sound that they're after, and it helps us to revise all the topics that we've learned so far. Now, my advice to you would be to use this as a revision exercise, and so working in pencil, so it doesn't matter if you go wrong. If something goes wrong and you get an answer incorrect, you can always just erase it and have another go. But it's much better to learn by your mistakes because you'll learn more thoroughly that way rather than just by copying, in which case that's quite a passive way of working through it, and that way you just forget things more quickly. And so you do learn better by making some mistakes. It's inevitable, really, and this is where we want to really learn these topics. So we're going to use this as a revision exercise. So if you feel able to, I suggest you try and answer these first of all on your own, and then pop back into the video and check through the answers with me. Of course, if you get a bit stuck, then dip back into the video at any point. But do try some of them on your own at least, if you can. So I'm hoping you've had a go, and let's now work through this together. So we have this little extract of music by Schubert, and let's see what's going on. Let's just have a little look at it first before we get entrenched in looking at the questions. So we're in the bass clef now, so just watch out you're in the correct clef. We have no key signature and actually no accidentals at all. We have some tempo directions, some dynamic markings, and we have some articulation markings too. And the composer has been very precise in exactly how he wants each note to be articulated. So now we've had a little look at this, I think we're prepared to start answering the questions. So first of all, we're asked to tick the bar number that contains a dotted quaver. So let's just look through and find a dotted quaver. Now, a quaver can be joined with a beam. However, the dot, to be a dotted quaver, must come after the note, not above the note. Remember, this is an articulation marking. This means staccato. That's not a timing issue. That's telling us to play the note detached. We're looking for a dot after a note, not above it. So it needs to be placed correctly. And so here we have a dotted quaver. And that means, if you think a quaver is worth half a beat, and then the dot after a note makes it half as long again, and so half of a half is a quarter, and so that means our dotted quaver is worth 3/4 of a beat. And if this is quite tricky for you, I must admit that maths is not my strong point, and so I prefer to diagram it out. And so here we have a crotchet beat. And let's divide that into quarters. So each one of these is a semi-quaver, quarter of a beat each. So a quaver is worth half a beat. And then the dot after it is worth half as much again. And so there's our quarter. And we can see now that the dotted quaver is worth 3/4 of a beat, leaving just 1/4 of a beat left for the semi-quaver. And so instead of being equal halves, it's a dotted one, so it's one. We get that sort of dotted bouncy rhythm because it's unequal. It's like slightly longer and shorter rather than two equal halves. So there we go, a good bit of revision there. So we can see that the answer to that is bar 4, so let's give that a tick. Now we're asked, how should the notes of bar 4 be played? Are they cantabile? Are they dolce? Are they legato? Are they staccato? Let's use this as a real revision opportunity and let's answer all of them. So cantabile, if you remember when we were discussing this topic in a previous lesson, I gave a terrible operatic rendition of this word, and that's the way that I can remember that it means in a singing style. I won't do it again because it's a very unpleasant sound, but it helps you to remember. Now dolce, I remember that as sort of being a sweet little dolly. It means sweetly, although I've since learned that in Italy you can have like sort of crunchy croissant type desserts, and they are actually called dolces, and they're a sweet little pastry. So that's another way of remembering that. Legato means smoothly, and then the opposite of legato is staccato, which means detached. So you can see kind of their flip sides, opposites there. So we've answered all of those. Let's make every drop of revision possible out of this. And so now let's look at bar 4. In bar 4, we have this sign here. Now that sign can be used in two different ways. It can be used to show ties when it's notes of the same pitch that are added together, note head to individual note head. Here that's not the case. Here it's an articulation where it's telling us to play them smoothly. That's a slur sign that means to play smoothly. So that should give us our answer, that we are to be playing it smoothly. Legato means smoothly. Let's look at the next question. So we're told that the melody is in the key of C major, and we know that because there is no key signature, no accidentals, and the scale pattern, the major scale pattern that has no sharps or flats, is C major. And now we're asked to tick the degree of the scale of the first note and the last note. So we need to find out what degree of the scale the first note of the melody is. We can't answer that until we know that we're in the key of C major. So now that we know that it's C major, we can work and find the answer. So C is our tonic, so in the bass clef this would be C, all cows eat grass. And then we can count from C. Now this is where we've got to be careful to remember to count note 1, because C is the first degree of the scale, D is the second, E is the third, F is the fourth, and then G. And we can count space line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so we know that's the fifth. However, if you want to be extra sure, you can write out the steps of the scale, and then you can just number those 1, 2, 3. These are the degrees of the scale. And we know that this is a G, all cows eat grass, and we can see that indeed G is the fifth, and so we know that we're correct. So now we can answer that fully confident that we're correct. So the first note of the melody is a fifth. Let's now do the same for the last note. So if you've not tried this on your own, perhaps you can just try this next question on your own. Now you know what to do. And let's work through this answer together. So here's the last note of the melody. Again, we're still in the bass clef. And so here's our C, all cows. And then next door to that is a D. So we're counting C as 1, D as 2. It's a second. And we can see that that's correct. D is the second. And so we can answer this question now. Second. In D, we just got a little bit of observation. We're asked to give the number of the bar that contains the only rest in the melody, so the only silence that's marked. And here we have that rest. Let's just make sure we know what we're discussing here. This is a quaver beat rest, which is worth half a beat of silence. And so we can see there should be 2 beats in a bar. Beat 2 is half a beat of note, half a beat of silence. This note is cut short and the last part of the bar is silence. And so we can say that it's bar 4 that has the rest. Moving on, in exercise 2E, we're asked to tick one box, just one, to complete this sentence. The tempo of the melody is. So let's see what the tempo says. The tempo marking is always given at the first point of the melody, the beginning of the first bar. We need to know how to play it before we get carried away. Allegro. Now this is just down to a little bit of revision. I always remember this. Allegro is fast because there was a vintage car. I can never remember. I must find out. I think it was a Ford Allegro. Oh no, was it an Austin? I don't know. Anyway, that's just how I remember it. Allegro basically means quick. And if you remember, a closely associated word is allegretto. So you can see the root word allegro is still there. Allegretto means fairly quick. So it's easy to join those two words together to help us to remember that. But now let's find which box tells us the answer. And there it is, straight away, quick. Allegretto is fairly quick, but we've got allegro, which is quick. We could, let's just give a little bit more opportunity for revision here, and let's now give the answer to all of these. Let's make the best use of this possible. So how could we say in the correct performance term at a medium speed? Well, we could say andante, which means at a medium kind of speed, walking speed, or we could even say moderato, I guess would do, if that was an option, at a moderate speed. We've already discussed fairly quick, which we know is allegretto, and slow. Now this one, again, it's just a matter of having a bit of revision, and I do give some tips on how to revise these in the lesson where we discussed all of these performance directions and tempo markings. But the word for slow is adagio, and I just think it's it just looks like it's a slow word, adagio. Just in my head, that makes sense. And it's just finding ways to remember these Italian words. And to be honest, the more bizarre that you make it, the better you will remember them. If you remember cantabile, I did a terrible operatic way of saying this word just to help me to remember that it's in a singing style. So I think we've squeezed every drop of revision out of that question. Let's move on to the final section. So we now need to say whether each of these statements is true or false. So is it true or false that the melody is written in the treble clef? Let's have a look. Well, that's not a treble clef, that's a bass clef. So straight away we can say that's false. Is it true or false that the first note of bar 1 should be played with an accent? Let's have a look. So bar 1, the first note is this note here, and we've got this marking here. And this little pointy arrow thing does indeed mean an accent marking. So yes, so that's played with a sort of a bit of an extra oomph, a bit extra attack to that. So that is an accent. And so we know that that is true. Is it true or false that all the quavers, so let's just watch out, all of the quavers should be played staccato? Let's have a look. So that's staccato, these are the quavers, that's staccato, that's staccato. However, here, we've already kind of answered that question. We'll come back to this. It's a tricky one. Staccato, staccato, staccato. So you could be excused for thinking, yes, all of the quavers are staccato. But this is a dotted quaver, so this still falls under the umbrella of being in the staccato groupings, and that's actually slurred. So really, it's a false answer, although I can understand how you would perhaps think it was true because that's a dotted quaver, not just a quaver. And finally, all the notes in bar 6, should they be played loudly? Is that true or false? Let's look at bar 6. Well, here's bar 6, and yes, it does begin loudly, that's our forte, but that's the crotchet, and then we have quavers here, and they are, suddenly that note has got quieter, and now these final quavers in the bar are actually piano, which means quietly, and so that is false. And that's the end of that exercise. I hope this is helpful to your studies. Please do like and subscribe to stay updated. If you'd like to support this channel, you can buy me a coffee, and for advert-free lessons you can become a patron. Do visit my website where you'll find many resources available to help you. Visit sharonbill.com. Thanks for watching. Bye.